are doing chapter 42 of my new book, Overcoming ACT Math, and this is the review test chapter, so that's what we're going to do to get started. So number 1 says, in a geometric sequence, the fifth term is 48 and the common ratio is 2. What is the first term? Okay, so for geometric sequence, that's the one that has this formula right here, where we have whatever the nth term is, in this case it's going to be the fifth term, is equal to the first term in our list, a1, times the common ratio r to the n minus 1 power. Now we're talking about a5 here, and that's going to be equal to a1 times the common ratio is 2, being raised to the n minus 1, which is 5 minus 1. Now we know what a5 is. The fifth term, they tell us, is 48. So we're going to have our equation set up like this, and then we're going to solve for what a1 is. So we have 48 is equal to the first term times 2 to the fourth would be 16. So then we're going to divide each side by 16 to get a1 by itself. So then we would get that 3 is equal to a1, meaning the first term. So it would be f. So now we're going to go to number 2, and it says, use the parallelogram FGHJ shown below to answer the next two questions. What is the slope of FJ? So this line right here. Now you could use slope formula to find out what that is, but there's a faster and easier way. When the line is like this, where it's just flat horizontal like that, it lines up with the z in a 0. That's the way that I remember it. So then you know it's 0 slope. You could use the formula if you want to as well. So that's going to be B. So let's go to the next one, number 3. If parallelogram FGHJ is reflected over the y-axis, then what will be the coordinates of the image of point G? So for point G right here, we have that it's -4, 3. We want it to go over, reflect over the y-axis. When we reflect over the y-axis, that's when the x changes sign. So if we're reflecting over the y-axis, that means that we have to go from -4 to +4. So it's going to be +4, 3. So then it's going to be H. So now let's go to number 4. It says the amplitude of this is, so amplitude is just when you have one of these trig equations, it's just going to be the number out in front. So 2 in this case is our amplitude. Now for number 5, it says circle A has a radius of 5 meters. Circle B has a radius that is 50% larger than the radius of circle A. Approximately how many times larger is the area of circle B than the area of circle A? So let's do a little writing out our givens, where we have that the radius of circle A, meaning RA right there, is going to be 5 meters. And the radius of B is going to be equal to 1.5 because it's 150% of whatever circle A's radius is, because if it's 50% greater, we already have 100% of it. We have to go 50% more, so that's how we get 150% of whatever A is, which is 5. And then if we multiply that, that should be 7.5 that we get for radius B. So now we know the radius of each, so we can now calculate the area of each. So the area of circle A is going to be equal to pi r squared, and r for A is 5. And the area of B is going to be equal to pi r squared also, but in this case, r is going to be 7.5. So now we just have to calculate what the area of A is by squaring 5 and then multiplying by pi, so this would just be 25 pi. And then for area of circle B, we're going to do 7.5 squared times pi, so then that's going to be 56.25 pi. And now, if we want to know how much greater area B is than area A, we just have to do a proportion. We can say that area B, 56.25 pi, over area A, 25 pi, will tell us how much greater area B is than area A. So we need to cross out the pi's on top and bottom, and then we just have to divide 56.25 by 25. So when we do that, what we should get is 2.25, so that would be J. So let's go to number 6. It says the safe level of fluoride in drinking water is 0.7 parts per million ppm. but the measurement tool has a margin of error of 0.1 ppm. Which of the following could be the range of measurements on the tool that could be deemed safe? So what we're going to do is, if we're talking about in this context the safe level of fluoride, so if we're talking about the safe levels of fluoride, it means it can be up to that 0.7 mark. It just can't go above that, basically. And the tool that we're using can be off by 0.1. That's what the margin of error means. It can be off by 0.1. So if we want to get 0.7 as our max that we can have of fluoride in the water, and we could be off with our tool by 0.1, that means that our tool can read all the way up to 0.8, because 0.7 plus 0.1 is 0.8. So it just has to be a number that's less than that, which would be what A says, less than or equal to 0.8. So then let's go to number 7. Functions f and g are defined by this. Which of the following is equivalent to f of g of x? So we're taking f of g of x, so that means that we're taking the f function of x plus 5 is what g of x is. So we're really finding f of x plus 5. So you see how x plus 5 is in parentheses here and x is in parentheses here? That means that we're replacing the x with x plus 5 everywhere that we see it in that f function. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to say that we're replacing the x with x plus 5. So it's going to be x plus 5 squared minus 2. So this is just going to be squared, so we have to FOIL that. So that's going to be x plus 5 times x plus 5. Hold on, I think my video is lagging. Let me just do something really quick. Be right back in a sec. And then we're going to subtract 2. So we're going to FOIL this now, because we have 2 terms plus or minus in parentheses times 2 terms plus or minus in parentheses. So FOIL is an acronym that stands for what we're multiplying. We're going to multiply the first terms. That's what the F is for. So x times x, which is x squared. O is for outer, so 5 times x, so plus 5x. I is for inner, so 5 times x plus 5x. And then L is for last, so 5 times 5, so plus 25. And then we copy over the minus 2. Now, when we combine our like terms here, we're going to have 5x plus 5x is just 10x, so it's x squared plus 10x, and then 25 minus 2 is just going to be plus 23, so it's going to be g. So now we're going to go to number 8. It says, Amy is using a hammer to drive a nail into her kitchen cabinet. By the first hit of the hammer, the nail is, someone just asked, I think I saw a couple people ask about number 6, why it's not C, because it's saying that we could be off, it's saying the range of the measurements with the tool that could be off by 0.1. So it could be, like, even if in real life it's reading 0.7, or it should read 0.7, the machine has a margin of error where it could be off by 0.1. So it could read all the way up on the machine to 0.8, because that's what 0.7 plus 0.1 is. So that's why you have to take into account the margin of error, which is like how much the tool would be off by. So now let's go to number 8. Amy is using a hammer to drive a nail into her kitchen cabinet. By the first hit of the hammer, the nail was driven 4 inches into the kitchen cabinet. During each hit, the nail was driven into the kitchen cabinet an additional distance that was half the distance the nail was driven into the cabinet on the previous hit. In total, Amy hits the nail with the hammer 4 times. If this is true, then by how many inches was the nail driven into the kitchen cabinet? Thank you for the rows, guys. So now what we're going to do is we're going to say, okay, I would just write out a list of, like, easily just kind of like tell you about like the first hit, what happens, the second hit, what happens. So if this is representing the hits, the number of hits that you're on, so like the first hit was, it drove it in by 4 inches, and this is how much it's driving in, like the distance it's been driven in. And then we go to the second hit. Well, the second hit is going to be those 4 inches we already have, plus it said that you're going to drive it in half of that, of the previous hit, so you're driving it in half of 4, which is 2. So then this is going to be 6. And then we have for the third hit, it's going to be that it's 6 plus whatever half of the previous one was that we drove it into. So we drove it in 2 on the previous one, so half of 2 would be 1. So then this equals 7. And then this would be 7 plus 1 divided by 2. So this would be 7.5. So then that would be 7.5 is the answer right here. So then, can you show an example of the type of problem found in your ACT book? So the type of problem in my ACT book. What do you mean? This is my ACT book. So these are examples of problems. So then let's go to number 9. For the triangle shown below, what is the sign of F? So remember SOHCAHTOA, where sine is going to be the so part in SOHCAHTOA. So sine is equal to the opposite over the hypotenuse for your reference angle. So if we're taking the sine of F, this is our reference angle, F. So we need the opposite side, this side, over the hypotenuse. Now this is just a Pythagorean triple that we've memorized, the 5, 12, 13. You could, if you forgot that this was one of the Pythagorean triples that you memorized, you could have just used Pythagorean theorem and said 5 squared plus x squared, and like this would be x over here, plus x squared has to equal 13 squared, and you could have solved for x, but I have it memorized, so I'm going to just say that that's 12, because I know that. So this is going to be equal to 12 as the opposite side for F over the hypotenuse, which is 13. So 12 over 13, so F, right there. So then for number 10, it says, which of the following could be the center of the circle with the equation, this right here? So if you remember learning equation of a circle, it looked something like this. Now, this does not look anything like that, so we have to fix that. We have to make this look like this equation of a circle that we're used to. The way we do that is by doing something called completing the square. So I'm going to set that up. So we're going to add a blank right next to the 4x, and then we're going to do the same thing with the y's, because we're adding some number to each of these parts. And when we do that on the left, we have to do it on the right because we need to balance the equation. So that's why I'm putting 2 blanks on the right, because whatever I add over here, I have to add to the right as well to balance it. Now, the way that you figure out what you put in that blank is you look at the number in front of x, which is 4, you divide it by 2, and then you square it. So 4 divided by 2 is 2. 2 squared would be 4. So I'm adding a 4 there, and I'm adding a 4 here. Now I'm going to do the same thing, but with the y's. So with the y's, to find out what goes in the blank there, I'm going to take the 6, divide it by 2, because it's whatever's in front of y, you divide by 2 and square it. So 6 divided by 2 is 3. 3 squared is going to be 9. So then I'm going to also add that over here to balance the equation. So now, the reason this is called completing the square is because now we can nicely square it. We can look at the x portion right here, and we can say, oh, that's just x plus 2 squared. It's the same thing as all of that. And then if we look at the y portion, we can do the same thing, where we could say it's y plus 3 squared would give us all of that. And that's going to equal 4 plus 4 plus 9. So 8 plus 9 is 17. Now we're just being asked for the center of the circle. It now looks like that equation we're used to. The center of the circle is just going to be the opposite of whatever's next to x and the opposite of whatever next to the y. So it's going to be -2, because that's the opposite, comma, -3. So that would be E for this one. Let me just get water really quick, guys. Okay. So someone said that a lot of people are saying they still don't get it. So this is something called completing the square. You need to complete the square here because they're not giving it to you in the regular way that we're used to seeing an equation of a circle. So the way that we complete the square basically is you have to just put the x's together and the y's together, and you're adding a certain number to each of those groups, like the groups of x's and the groups of y. Now, the way you figure out what number to add is just you have to remember that whatever number is in front of the x, you divide by 2 and square it. So 4 is the number in front, divide it by 2 and square it. So there's the reason you divide by 2 is because like this is how you complete the square. You learn this in school. You just have to memorize that you divide by 2 and square it. So 4 divided by 2 is 2, and then square it, and you would get 4. So that's how I got the 4 there, and I added the 4 on the other side too, because whatever I do to one side, I have to do the other. And then I did the same thing with the y's, except the number in front of y is 6. So then we have to do 6 divided by 2, which is 3, because we're doing divide by 2, then square it to find out what goes here. So then that's 3 squared, and that's how we get 9. So we have to add 9 to each side. Then you say, okay, the reason I did this was because I want to make it look like this formula right here. So I look at the x part right here, the x squared plus 4x plus 4, and I need to make it look like this. So I have to think, how can I make it look like that? Well, I could say x plus 2 squared would give me this. And then I do the same thing for the y's. How do I make it look similar to this? Well, y plus 3 squared is the same thing as that. And then we say it's all equal to 17. And then we just have to do the, we now have something that looks like the equation of a circle formula. So h comma k would just be -2 comma -3. So let's go to the next one, which says, and you could put it, someone said a good point, you can put it into a graphing calculator if you want to see the center of a circle. That's another option too. So then for number 11, it says a town's water tank is in the shape of a right circular cylinder. It has a radius of 6 meters and a height of 4 meters. Assuming that the water tank is completely filled with water and the water tank container itself weighs 500 pounds, how much does the entire water tank weigh in pounds? Okay, so, oh, also I should have said at the beginning of this video that the answer choices on this are in the old book. So these are actually wrong. I changed it. Because I forgot to multiply by pi, which we'll see in a second when I was making this. But what you do here, so just ignore the answer choices, is you basically have to find the volume of the water in the water tank. Then you have to find out how many pounds that's equivalent to. And then you add that to the 500 pounds that the tank actually weighs. So we have to find the volume first. So volume of a right circular cylinder is equal to pi r squared times h. So it would be equal to pi times, they told us that r was 6, so 6 squared, times 4 for the height. So that's going to be equal to 144 pi. And it's in meters cubed. Sorry, that's my dog. 144 pi meters cubed. And then now we're going to turn that into pounds because we're talking about weight. So we know that 1 cubic meter is equivalent to 2,205 pounds. So we can cross out these meters cubed to then be left with just how many pounds this is equal to. So when we multiply all that out, we're going to get that that's equal to 317,520 pi. But then we have to add on 500 to that. So we have to do in our calculator 317,520 times pi plus 500. And that's going to be equal to 998,000 and 18.49 yada yada yada, basically. So that's how you do that one. And then for number 12, it says which of the following is equivalent to this right here. So this is saying that we have a factor of, or that we have, that it's being multiplied by itself 3 different times. The same thing's being multiplied by itself 3 different times. So x minus 2i times x minus 2i times x minus 2i is what this says. So let's start by FOILing out just x minus 2i times x minus 2i. So when we FOIL that out, we're going to get the first things multiplied are x times x, so x squared. The outside multiplied is going to be negative 2i times x, sorry, so negative 2ix. Inner stuff multiplied is going to be negative 2ix. And then we're going to say negative 2i times negative 2i is going to be positive 4i squared, and then all of that is going to be multiplied by x minus 2i. So now we have to combine our like terms here, and we know that I squared is equal to -1, so we can make our life easier by plugging in a -1 for I squared. And then this would become x squared, and then we combine the like terms to get negative 4ix, and then 4 times -1 is going to be -4, and that's all going to be multiplied by x minus 2i. Now, when we're multiplying here, this is not FOILing. because we don't have two terms plus or minus here. This has more than two terms, so we can't FOIL. What we're going to do instead is we multiply the x times each of these, and then we multiply the negative 2i times each of these. So let's start with the x. X times x squared is going to be x cubed. And then x times negative 4ix is going to be negative 4i x squared. And then x times negative 4 is going to be negative 4x. And then we're going to now say, okay, I have to multiply negative 2i times each of these. So negative 2i times x squared is going to be negative 2i x squared. Negative 2i times negative 4ix is going to be positive 8i squared x. And then negative 4 times negative 2i is going to be positive 8i. So now we have some stuff that we can combine because they're like terms. For instance, the negative 4i x squared and negative 2i x squared there. We can combine those like terms. So then we get x cubed minus 6i x squared. And then we can copy down the rest. So we have negative 4x. And remember, I squared is the same thing as negative 1. So we can say 8 times negative 1 is negative 8. So this is actually negative 8x plus 8i. Now we have these like terms that we can combine here. So we have negative 4x minus 8x, which would give us negative 12x. So the answer would be B right here. X cubed minus 6i x squared minus 12x plus the 8i. So then we have number 13. The average height of 12 girls is, so I squared equals 1. It equals negative 1. Negative 1. So 13, the average height of 12 girls is 65 inches. I squared is negative 1. I squared is equal to negative 1. That's something you have to memorize for the ACT and the SAT. So number 13 says the average height of 12 girls is 65 inches. After excluding the oldest girl, the average height of the 11 remaining girls is 64 inches. Which of the following is closest to the height of the oldest girl in feet? So we have to be careful because they're asking about feet as our unit. So what we need to do is first let's write an equation for the average being 65. So there's 65 inches is the average height of 12 girls. Now remember, to find the average or the mean, it's going to be the sum divided by how many you're talking about. So you're talking about 12 data points for the 12 different girls' heights. And it would be just the sum of the 12 heights divided by 12 equals that average or that mean of 65. Now, if we want to come up with a similar equation for when it's 64 inches as the average or the mean, we would say that the mean or average, 64 inches, is equal to, that would be the sum of the 11 divided by 11. But another way that we could say sum of 11 is we could say that that's the sum of 12 minus the girl they exclude. So it would be sum of 12 minus that x for the height of the girl that they exclude, the oldest girl that they're excluding. And that would be the same as saying the sum of the 11. So what we're going to do, sorry, that's my dog. She's totally fine. So what we're going to do here is we're going to solve for what sum of 12 is and plug that in and then find x. So sum of 12 is going to be equal to 12 times 65. So that's going to be equal to 780. So 780 is equal to the sum of 12. So now I can plug that in here to find x. So then this is going to be 64 is equal to 780 minus x over 11. And we're going to multiply each side by 64. And that's going to get this 780 minus x by itself. So when we multiply each side by 11, we're going to get 704 is equal to 780 minus x. For anyone that this is going too fast for, remember that this is uploaded onto YouTube later, so you can slow down the speed of the video. So then let's go and now subtract 780 from each side to get x by itself. That's going to cancel out there. So then we have negative 76 is equal to negative x. So that means that x is equal to 76. So that would be the height. But the height has to be in feet. So hold on. Sorry, I got distracted answering questions. So this is 76 inches, and we have to turn that into feet. So we have to say there's 12 inches in 1 foot. So we have to say what is 76 divided by 12 to get it into feet. So that would be 6.3 repeating feet. So then that would be closest to G. So that would be the answer. My YouTube channel is the same as this one. It's AG Tutoring. There's a link also on my homepage of my website, which is in my profile. Okay, so let's go to number 14. It says the length of a rectangle is 30 inches and its area is 600 square inches. What is the perimeter of this rectangle in inches? Okay, so area of a rectangle is equal to the length times the width. The length is 30. We know what the area is, so we can say that it's 600 is equal to 30 times the width. If we divide each side by 30, we would get what the width is equal to. So the width would be equal to 20 when we divide each side by 30. So we have now what the width and what the length are. So now we can find the perimeter. The perimeter of a rectangle is going to be 2 times the length, which is 30, plus 2 times the width, which is 20. So that's going to be equal to 60 plus 40, which is equal to 100B. So now let's go to number 15. Oops. Give her a second just to get that out, and then we'll start. Oh, and hold on, let me check to make sure there's no editing mistakes really quick. No, we're good. Okay. So let's see, number 15, the night before his birthday party, Jason sorted 2,000 party favors into bags. In each bag, he put 15 party favors. If Jason is allowed to keep any leftover party favors, then how many party favors could he keep? Okay, so 2,000 party favors, and he has to divide them into groups of 15, because there's 15 that go into each bag. So whatever the remainder is, that's how many leftover party favors he has. So we would say 15 goes into 20, that would be 1 time. So then we subtract and we get 5, bring down the 0. 15 goes into 50 3 times. 3 times 15 is 45. Subtract, we get 5, bring down the 0 again. So then 15 again goes in 3 times into into 50. And then, so what we're going to do is 3 times 15 is 45, and that's going to be 5 as the remainder, so the remainder should be 5. So that's how many are left over, the remainder, which is 5G. And then we have 15, a cheer camp holds auditions for their new varsity camp. They accept 3 out of every 5 people that audition. Given that the cheer camp accepted 420 people into the camp, how many were not accepted? So we want to know how many were not accepted. So if we know that the ratio is 3 to 5 for the people that are accepted, we could say 3 people are accepted for every 5 total. Part over whole is equal to part over whole, which is 420 people accepted out of the whole X right there. We could solve for that whole, the total number of people that are going, or that are trying out, I guess, for the cheer camp. And then we could subtract the ones that got accepted to find out the ones that are not accepted. So let's find that total amount of people by cross multiplying. So that would be 3x is equal to 420 times 5. 420 times 5, that's going to be 2,100. So then we get that x is equal to 700. Now that's the total number of people, not the people that are not accepted. So the total is 700. If we subtract the people that were accepted, 420, we would find how many are not accepted, which is what we're interested in. So that would give us 280A. So let's now go to number 17. So it says, Amelia started a road trip at 11 a.m. Amelia stopped for lunch 2 hours and 30 minutes after she began her journey. She spent 45 minutes having lunch before getting back on the road. When did Amelia get back on the road? Okay, so let's break this up into parts. So 11 a.m., that's when she starts. Then she's going to stop 2 hours and 30 minutes later. So let's add on 2 hours and 30 minutes. So if we add on 2 hours and 30 minutes, that's going to be 1:30 p.m. Now let's add on the 45 minutes that she's having lunch. So if we add on 45 minutes that she has lunch before she gets on the road, it's going to be 2:15 p.m. So that would be H. That's when she's getting back on the road. So now we have number 18. If a rectangular table is 72 feet long and 18 feet wide, then what is the area of the table in square yards? So area, let's first find it in square feet and then convert it into square yards. So the area in square feet is going to be equal to, it's a rectangle, so length times width, so 72 times 18. And then that's going to be equal to 72 times 18 is 1,296. But remember, this is feet squared and they want square yards. So 1,296 feet squared is what we're talking about. But we want to convert it to yards squared. So I need to ask myself, what's the relationship between feet squared and yards squared? Well, I know that if I'm just talking about yards, regular yards, 1 yard is equal to 3 feet. But here's the catch. Remember, it's squared. So that means that if we square each side, 1 yard squared is equal to 9 feet squared. So it would be 9 feet squared to every 1 yard square. So then we just have to do 1,296 divided by 9, and then we'll get how many yards squared it is. So when we do that, we are going to get 144. So that would be B. So then let's go to the next one, number 19. For two similar right triangles, the corresponding sides are in the ratio of 5 to 6. If the smaller triangle has a hypotenuse, so yes, isn't there 3 feet in a yard? Yes, that's why I said that this is a trick question for some people, because it's going to be square yards, not just yards. They're asking about square yards, so you have to consider that you square each of them. 1 yard is equal to 3 feet, but 1 yard squared, like if you square each side, 1 yard squared is equal to 9 feet squared. 19. For two similar right triangles, the corresponding sides are in the ratio of 5 to 6. If the smaller triangle has a hypotenuse of 30 inches, then how long is the hypotenuse of the larger triangle in inches? So we have 5 is to 6. 5 would have to be the side of the smaller triangle because it's smaller than 6. So 5 is to 6 as, Chloe, stop that. Chloe, no. Sorry, my dog. Okay, so 5 is to 6, small over big, that matches, is equal to small over big, that matches, for the ratios of similar triangles. So that means that the small hypotenuse, 30, over the big hypotenuse, x, would be the proportion that matches on the right. So we have the small that matches and the big that matches on top and on bottom. So now we would just cross multiply and we get 5x is equal to 6 times 30, which is 180. So then we're going to just divide by 5 on each side to get x by itself. And when we do that, we get that x is equal to 36j. For the last question, could you not divide by 72 and 18 by 3 and then multiply them? Oh, you mean like turn them into yards first and then, yeah, you could do it backwards if you want to. You can turn them into yards first and then find the area if you wanted to do that. So then let's go to number 20. Number 20 says, what is the equation of the line that passes through 2, 4 and is perpendicular to the line right here? So remember, perpendicular lines have negative reciprocal slopes. So then we could say, okay, I'm going to first put this into y equals mx plus b format so I can figure out what the slope is, and then I just take the negative reciprocal of that. I have the slope of my new line. So if I want to get y by itself so that it's in y equals mx plus b format, well, what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to subtract 4x from each side first. When I do that, I get negative 2y is equal to 6 minus 4x. Now I need to divide by negative 2 to get y by itself. When I do that, I get y is equal to negative 3 plus 2x. So the slope for this line, m, is going to be 2. Now, remember, we're finding the perpendicular lines equation. Perpendicular lines have negative reciprocal slopes. So if the slope here is 2, which is the same thing as 2 over 1, The negative reciprocal is going to be negative 1/2. The negative flip is another way to think about it. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, okay, that's my slope for the line I'm interested in. I'm going to plug that in for m in y equals mx plus b format. I know what my x and y are here because they gave me a point that works on the line. So I could plug in 2 for x and 4 for y and solve for b to get my equation. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to say 4 is my y, and I'm going to say 2 is my x, and then I'm going to solve for what b is. So what we're going to do is we're going to say 4 is equal to negative 1/2 times 2 is negative 1 plus b. Then I'm going to get b by itself by adding 1 to each side. So then b is going to be equal to 5. So if I know that the slope is negative 1/2 and the b, the y-intercept, is 5, I can plug that in to get an equation for my line that I'm being asked about. Y is equal to negative 1/2 x plus 5. Now you'll notice it looks a little bit different here than it does right here, but we still are doing this the right way. You're going to see why. All we have to do is we have to say, okay, how did they manipulate this to make it look like one of these? Usually it's going to be that they multiply the entire equation by something, usually the denominators. So there's a denominator of 2 right here. If I multiply the entire equation by 2, I would get that that's 2y is equal to 2 times negative 1/2 is just going to be negative 1. So negative x, negative 1x, which is just negative x. 2 times 5 is going to be 10. So then it would be 2y is equal to negative x plus 10. So it would be C. So we're going to now go to number 21, which says, Joseph bought a new high-tech computer given that he made an initial payment of $1,000. Then what is the negative reciprocal of someone was asking about why it's negative 1/2, because perpendicular means that you have to have the negative reciprocal slope. So the slope of the line that they gave us initially was 2, positive 2. So we want to take the negative reciprocal, which means like the negative flip. So we make it negative, we multiply by negative and flip it upside down so the 1's on top and the 2's on bottom. And that's how we know that should be the slope of our new line that's perpendicular. This is for the ACT exam. So this is my book for the ACT. If anyone's interested in getting it, it's available now on Amazon. It just released. It's Overcoming ACT Math by Sophia Garcia. So let's go to number 21. Joseph bought a high-tech computer given that he made an initial payment of $1,000, then made 48 equal monthly payments and paid a total of $10,000. What was the amount of each of his monthly payments for this new high-tech computer? So we have the initial payment, kind of like a down payment of $1,000 plus 48 equal monthly payments. So 48 times the X amount for each of the monthly payments. If we add that up, that's going to equal the $10,000 total. So we're going to subtract 1,000 from each side, and when we do that, we get 48x is equal to 9,000. So now I'm going to divide by 48 on each side to get x by itself, and that's going to give me that x, meaning the monthly payment, is equal to $187.50. So that would be G. Now for number 22, it says the slope of the line that passes through the points, these are the points, is, so this would just be slope formula. So I'm going to call this x2, y2, and I'm going to call this x1, y1. So the slope formula says that we're just going to subtract the y's over the subtracted x's. You could have made this x1, y1, and this x2, y2. It's the same thing as long as you're consistent about the 2's go together and the 1's go together. So then what we're going to do, and guys, this is the ACT, so for people complaining about not showing all the work for right here, all you have to do is divide by 28, which is what I said on each side, in your calculator. You don't have to do the division out on the ACT. So then what we're going to do now is we're going to plug in y2, which is 3, and we're going to plug in y1, which is 2, and now we're going to plug in x2, which is -8, and then x1, which is 1. And then we're going to now subtract on top, 3 minus 2 is 1, and then on bottom, -8 minus 1 is -9. So -1/9, A. Thank you guys for liking and sharing the live. Which of the following functions is graphed below? Okay, so for this one, a lot of people forget about like the parent functions and stuff on test day. So if that happens to you, what you can do is you could just plug in a point and see if it works in the equation. So for instance, like an easy point might be -2 right here, comma 4. So this would be your x and this would be your f of x, and you could plug it in to see which of these work. So for instance, for the answer choice F, you could say that's the negative of, this would be -2 plus 2. So then that would just be 0. So the -0 plus 4, that would give you -2 comma 4 when you plug that in. So that would work. But when you do this, you have to check it for all of them just to make sure that you're not doing it incorrectly. Or sorry, that you don't have not that you're not doing it incorrectly, that you don't have another equation that works is what I meant to say. Because sometimes multiple, like the same point works in multiple equations, so then you have to use a different point to rule it out. So that's kind of like the long way of doing it. The faster way of doing it is remembering the parent function, which is, the parent function are those functions that you memorize when you're learning about transformations, which is that the function f of x is equal to absolute value of x looks like this, where the vertex is 0, 0. And then you could say, okay, what transformations are being applied to get from here to here? So you could say, okay, well, they definitely went up by some. So they went up, if you look at the vertex, it goes up by 4. So they're going up 4. And then if you look at the new x for the vertex, they're going to the left by 2. So it's up 4, left 2, and then they have a reflection, which is like they flip it over an axis. It's kind of how you think about it. So this is being reflected over the x-axis. It's going like flipping this way over the x-axis. So, and then it reflects over the x-axis. So then you could apply those transformations to the original function and say, okay, which of these says that we go left 2, then up 4, and then reflects over the x-axis? So if you're going left by 2, that's the one where you have to add 2 next to the x. So the only one that has that is this one. So you know it's that one, and then you can just check the rest. It's going up by 4, so you would have to plus 4 to this initial function. And then reflecting over the x-axis means that you have to take the negative of the entire absolute value thing. So then that would be negative of the entire absolute value thing. That checks out. So it would be F. And if you forgot these, like the transformation rules, just so you know, if you have this book, it's going to be on page 333 you can refer to back in your book for the different transformation stuff. So now let's go to number 24. And if you're confused about that, just do the plugging in points thing to see if it works. If you're bad with transformations, just plug in points to see which one is matching the graph. So then let's go to number 24, find the zeros for this. So that basically just is another way of saying find the roots if you're not used to seeing find the zeros. But we're just finding what x is when y is 0. So when y is equal to 0, what is x? Now, you might want to, your first instinct would probably be to try and factor this, but if you look at the answer choices, it looks like it doesn't factor nicely because there's some decimals involved. So when I see decimals or like radicals, meaning like square roots and stuff involved in the answer choices, I decide that I'm going to do quadratic formula because that's probably not going to factor nicely if there's decimals involved. So the quadratic formula says that we'll find out what x is if we do negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. Now, to figure out what a, b, and c are, we just have to look at our quadratic. So a is going to be the number being multiplied by x squared, b is the number being multiplied by x, and c is the number floating on by itself over here. So a is 2, b is negative 3, c is positive 1. Now, all we have to do is just plug this into the quadratic formula and simplify it. So that means that x would have to be equal to negative of negative 3, so that would just be positive 3, plus or minus the square root of b squared, so negative 3 squared, minus 4 times a, which is 2, times c, which is 1, and then we're going to put that all over 2 times a, which is 2. So now it's going to be x is equal to 3 plus or minus the square root of negative 3 squared is 9. So 9 minus, and then 4 times 2 times 1, which is just 8, over 4. So that's equal to 3 plus or minus the square root of 1 over 4. Square root of 1 is just 1, so this is equal to 3 plus or minus 1 over 4. 3 plus 1 would be 4 over 4, which is just 1, so x could equal 1. Or we could do the minus version, which says 3 minus 1. 3 minus 1 is 2, over 4 is 2/4, or that's the same thing as 1/2. So 1/2 and 1 would be b. So now we're going to go and do the sum of two solutions here. So the formula for sum of two solutions would be negative b over a. So then what we're going to do is we're going to say, guys, you can use a calculator if you want to, but I like to show the actual logical reasoning behind it because you never know if your calculator is going to die on test day. So it's good for people to like see this. And also like if I show it on one calculator, like people have a bunch of different types of calculators. So then they'll ask like, how do I do it on this one? This is something that applies to everybody can do. So then what we're going to do is we're going to say for number 25, the sum of two solutions, this is the formula. And I didn't factor because I saw that in the answer choices there were decimals. Whenever I see decimals or radicals in the answer choices, I think, okay, it's probably not going to factor nicely with whole numbers because the factors are what it has to equal to. So I have to use quadratic formula. That's why I went for the quadratic formula. So let's now go to the sum of two solutions right here. So sum of two solutions is negative b over a, and then when we have our quadratic equal to 0, that means that a is going to be the number that's being multiplied by x squared, which here is that invisible 1, and then b is negative 1, the number that's being multiplied by x. So this is equal to negative of negative 1 for b over a, which is 1. The negative of negative 1 is just positive 1 over positive 1, and that's just going to be equal to h. Okay, so let's go to number 26. What are the coordinates of the vertex for the parabola? What is... Okay, hold on one second. What are the coordinates of the vertex? I'm going to get this guy out of the chat. He's annoying me. Okay, hold on. There we go. Okay, what are the coordinates of the vertex of the parabola with the equation right here? So for this, we just have to look at our vertex form for parabolas, which says that y is equal to a times x minus h squared plus k, where h comma k is your vertex. Okay, and then we're going to say that h is going to be whatever the opposite is of what's in here. So that's going to be negative 11. And then we have that k is going to be the number out here, so negative 33. So negative 11, comma, negative 33a. So for people asking, someone asked what book this is my book that just came out. It's available on Amazon, Overcoming ACT Math by Sophia Garcia. I'm glad that some people are enjoying it. You could just switch the signs of h. Yeah, that's kind of like how I think about it. I just think about it as the opposite of whatever's there for h. Sorry, we're getting a lot of spam, so I'm trying to like get the spam people out of the comments. Okay, so then let's go to number 27, the simplest form of the expression right here. So what we're going to do is we're going to see, okay, what is the greatest common factor? So greatest common factor for the numbers, let's see, does 7 go into 112? Yes, it does. 7 goes into 112. That would be, how many times? That's 16 times, yeah. So 7 goes into 112 16 times. So we're going to say we could divide by that 7 and say that that's 16. And then we could look at the x's. So x to the 4th divided by x squared, that would just be x to the 2nd power. Because remember, if you divide with like bases, you can subtract the exponents. So 4 minus 2 is 2, and we keep the like base of x. And then we just copy over everything else, the y to the 3rd. Now we're going to do the same thing, but with the second part of the equation right here, the negative 133x squared, z squared divided by all of that. So then we're going to say that that's negative 133 divided by 7 is going to be 19, so negative 19. And then we're going to say, okay, with the x's, x squared over x squared, that's going to be x to the 2 minus 2, which is just x to the 0, which is just 1, so we're not even going to write that. And then we copy over the rest, z squared. So the correct answer for this one would be H. So now let's go to number 28, which expression is equivalent to this right here. So remember that this is foiling, because we have 2 terms plus or minus in parentheses times 2 terms plus or minus in parentheses. Don't get tricked by the little 2 right there. It doesn't mean that you distribute the 2. It means that you have this being multiplied by itself twice. Or technically multiplied by itself once, like there's 2 factors of it is what that 2 means, that there's 2 of these as a factor. So then we're going to be foiling, which FOIL is an acronym that stands for what you multiply with the parentheses stuff. So it's going to be 4 times, F stands for multiplying the first things, x over 6 times x over 6. So then that's going to be x squared over 36. And then O is the outer stuff you multiply, so x over 6 times negative y over 7, so negative xy over 42. I stands for multiplying the inner stuff, so it would be negative 7 over y times x over 6, so negative xy over 42. L stands for multiplying the last things, negative y over 7 times negative y over 7, which would be positive y squared over 49. So now, hey, there is an error where x squared over 36, that's fine, minus xy over 42 minus xy over 42, y squared over 49. There's no error there. There's a 4 on the outside. If you think I didn't copy it over, it's right there. So then now we have to combine our like terms right here. So then we have 4 times x squared over 36, and then combine our like terms and we get minus 2xy over 42 plus y squared over 49. So then we can divide by 2 on top and bottom here. That would just be 1 that it cancels out to, and this would be 21. So then it would be 4 times x squared over 36 minus xy over 21 plus y squared over 49. So now we just have to distribute that 4. So 4 times each of these. Now you can do the whole multiplication out where you say 4 times x squared over 36 and then you simplify after, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to cross cancel the 4 and the 36 because 4 goes into 36 9 times. So I would say that this is just x squared over 9 because the 4 can cross cancel with 36 to 9. And then we would say minus, and then I'm going to distribute the 4 to 4xy over 21. And then I'm going to have that this is plus 4y squared over 49. So then we're going to see which of those says that. So that's going to be A, right there. So then let's see. For the next one, it says number 29, given that the strength of the gravitational pull is inversely proportional to the square of the distance between 2 objects, if the gravitational pull is 100 units when 2 objects are 20 units apart, then how strong is the gravitational pull when they are 40 units apart? Okay, so inversely proportional to the square of the distance between the 2 objects. So that means that we have to do the inverse formula, but then make sure that the distance on the bottom is squared. So the x would be the distance that we're talking about, like how far apart they are. And then this is going to be the gravitational pull. So they said, thanks for the rose, Lauren. So we have that the pull is going to be 100 units when the objects are 20 units apart. So 100 is equal to k over 20 squared. And then we would just do 20 squared, which is 400, and then multiply each side by 400 to get what k is. So when you multiply each side by 400, you get that 40,000 is equal to k. So now I'm going to plug that in for k so that I have a formula that I can use, and I can say that y is equal to 40,000 over x squared. Now, you have to make sure you keep the units consistent. So I have to make sure that y is the pool and x is the distance. Now, it's asking about what the pool is. What is y when the distance is 40? So when x is 40. So I'm going to plug in 40 for x. And then I'm basically going to just solve this to find out what y is. So then, when I do that, I'm going to get, and remember you can use a calculator for this part, so then that's going to be equal to 25g. Okay, so then let's go to the next part, which is, hold on, where is it? 30. Which of the following is equal to this? So we have a matrix right here, and we're adding with the matrix. Or matrices, whatever. So when we add with matrices, it's basically you just match up the positions and add. So like top left plus top left, top right plus top right, bottom left plus bottom left, bottom right plus bottom right. That's all it is. So let's do top left. So top left should be 8 plus negative 7. And then top right should be 7 plus 9. And then bottom left should be negative 5 plus 2. Bottom right should be 11 plus 4. So then you just have to simplify that. So 8 plus negative 7 is just going to be 1. And then 7 plus 9 is 16. Negative 5 plus 2 is negative 3. And 11 plus 4 is going to be 15. So then that's just going to be A. So now we have this one right here. Oh, it kind of got cut off there, but that says x cubed. So all of this in the equation above, k is a constant. If the equation is true for all values of x, what is the value of k? So remember, left side equals right side. So like whatever's being multiplied by something on the left has to equal what's being multiplied by on the right. So let's now, let's multiply this all out right here. And then we'll apply that logic afterwards to find out what k is. So to multiply this all out, I have to do x times each of these, and then I have to do negative 2 times each of these. So let's start with x times x cubed is going to be x to the 4th. X times kx squared is going to be plus kx cubed. X times negative 8 is going to be negative 8x. So now I'm going to do negative 2 times each of these. So negative 2 times x cubed is going to be negative 2x cubed. And then we have negative 2 times kx squared, which is going to be negative 2kx squared. Then we have negative 2 times negative 8, which is positive 16. And then that's equal to all this stuff on the right-hand side, which I'll just copy down. X to the 4th plus 5x cubed minus 14x squared minus 8x plus 16. Whoops, that got cut off a little bit. Okay, but that's supposed to say plus 16. So now what we're going to do is, remember, left has to equal right. So that means that the x cubed stuff right here has to equal the x cubed stuff on the right. So I'm going to factor out x cubed for that part and say I could take out the x cubed, and then that would be x cubed times k minus 2 would give me this again. So if I did x cubed and I multiplied, I would get kx cubed like I have here, and then I would get minus 2x cubed like I have right there. So the k minus 2 is being multiplied by x cubed is another way to rewrite this. And that has to equal the stuff on the right. That has to equal 5x cubed. If we cross out these x cubes, that means that k minus 2 has to equal 5. So then k has to equal 7 because you add 2 to each side and you get that k is equal to 7. So it would be h. So now let's go to number 32. So it says Mark is planning a housewarming party, but his house can only fit 30 people. He plans to invite his friends and coworkers, given that he wants to invite 3 times as many friends as coworkers. Which of the following systems of inequalities could Mark use to model the equation? So if you guys want to see the question again, just remember this is posted on YouTube later. So we're going to say that the number of friends is equal to 3 times the amount of coworkers. So we know it has to be either A, B, or C from that part. Then we know that the house can only fit 30 people. So remember, if we're talking about like everybody in the house, there's Mark, there's the friends, and there's the coworkers. So that means that Mark plus the friends plus the coworkers has to be 30 people or less. Now there's only one Mark, so we could just say that that's one Mark. and that has to be less than or equal to 30. So we could just subtract Mark from each side, and we would get that the friends plus the coworkers has to be less than or equal to 29. So then it would have to be B. So it says for 33, approximately how many minutes would it take to take a race car to drive 200 miles at a constant speed of 140 miles per hour? So remember, distance is equal to the rate times the time. Rate is the same, is like speed right here. So the distance, 200 miles, is equal to the speed or the rate, which is 140 times the time. Now remember, the time, the units for time here are in hours because they have to match your rate. So this is in hours. And remember, they're asking for minutes, so we have to keep that in mind. So let's solve for what t is in terms of hours. So t would have to be equal to 200 divided by 140, and that's hours. So then we could cross out the zeros and divide by 2 on top and bottom, and that would give us 10/7 hours. But we want to turn that into minutes, and we know that in 1 hour, there is 60 minutes. So we would just do 10/7 times 60. And when we do that, we are going to get 85.71 yada, yada, yada. So that's closest to J, 86. Okay, so then let's go to number 34. If f is a function defined by f of x, y equals all of that, then this one is what? Okay, so that means that x is our -1 and y is going to be our 3. Thank you for the roses, guys. So x is -1 and y is 3. So if we plug in -1, sorry, for x, it would look like this. And if we plug in 3 for y, it's going to look like this. I'm glad I'm your fave teacher, to the person that said that. That's very kind. So then -2 plus 15 is what we're going to get, and then that's going to be equal to 13b. So now we're going to go and do number 35. What is the value of all of this? So I'm going to start with my absolute value bars. This is for ACT Math for the person that asked, and yes, I do offer tutoring online. My website is in my profile. So it says that I have 3 times, well, what is 4 minus 7? 4 minus 7 is -3, so absolute value of -3. And then we're going to say minus 4 times 3 plus 5 is going to be 8. So now I'm going to say, okay, what's the absolute value of -3? And that's going to be just +3. Minus, and what's 4 times 8? That's 32. So then I'm going to have, okay, what's 3 times 3? That's 9 minus 32. 9 minus 32 is -23. G. If you need to see it slower, remember these get posted up to YouTube later, so you can always go back and see the problem again and slow it down in the video too. This is for ACT, but a lot of this stuff will help you with SAT as well. So then let's go to number 36. It says find an integer that has an odd number of distinct factors. Assume that there are only positive integer factors. Okay, so let's basically start listing out factors. So for number 12, it's 1, 12. Factors are the numbers that multiply to give you that certain number. So if you're asking about factors of 12, you're like, what numbers multiply to give you 12? 1 times 12. And then 2 times 6. So 2 and 6 are factors. And then 3 times 4. So 3 and 4 are factors. That means that there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 distinct factors, which is not an odd number. We're looking for an odd number of factors. So now let's go to the next one, which says that we have 16, and we're finding those factors. 1 times 16, and then would give you 16. 2 times 8 would give you 16. And also 4 times 4, but it's asking about not just factors, distinct factors. So that means ones that don't repeat over and over. So we have to cross out one of the 4s. This does have 5 factors, 5 distinct factors, I mean. So it would be B. And then someone asked about what the exponent here. So -1 cubed is just -1. So this was just 2 times -1 because -1 cubed is -1. So that's what I did there. Okay, so then let's go to the next one. It says 37, a group of hikers will mix 4 pounds of almonds, with 3/2 pounds of dried fruits to make a snack for their hiking trip. Each hiker will get a container filled with 1/4 pound of this snack mix. What is the maximum number of containers that the hiker can fill with the snack mix? So let's find out how much total snack mix there is. So that would be the 4 pounds plus the 3/2 pounds. So 4 is the same thing as 4 over 1. So if we multiply the top and the bottom by 2, we get a common denominator. So then that would be 4 times 2 is 8 over 1 times 2, which is 2. So 8 over 2. And then we're going to add 3/2, and we're going to get that that's 11/2 for the total amount of pounds for this, what is it, trail mix or something? Yeah, trail mix or snack mix. So that's the total number of pounds. So we know that each container is going to be filled with a fourth of a pound, of the snack mix. So we need to divide this into fourths. So we would say 11/2 divided by 4. The 2 came from, someone asked how I got the 2. The 2 came from, I know I'm adding fractions. So if I'm adding with fractions, I can't have a different denominator for each of them. I have to make sure they have a common denominator. So I said 4 is the same thing as 4 over 1. To make it have a common denominator of 2, I need to multiply by 2, and I have to do the same thing to the top. So that's where that came from. So then we're going to say that we're doing 11/2 divided by, sorry, I got distracted, divided by 1/4. So then we're dividing with fractions, so we're going to keep change flip. So we're going to keep 11/2, we're going to change division to multiplication, and we're going to flip the 1/4 to 4 over 1. So then that's going to be equal to 44 over 2, and then 44 over 2 is just equal to 22, so it would be G. Where do I get my practice questions? This is from my book, which is available on Amazon. It's called Overcoming ACT Math by Sophia Garcia. There's also an SAT version. So then let's go to number 38. So it says for number 38, if B is negative and C is positive, then which of the following is the graph of this right here? So let's start out with the B part. So B is negative. Remember, when you're talking about graphing inequalities, the line portion, like this, the line part, has to match up with, like, if you're thinking about this as a y equals mx plus b equation. Like, you can kind of pretend that this is y equals mx plus b until the end, to help you graph the line part first. So pretend that this is y equals mx plus b. Well, our slope, our m, is equal to b. So that means we have a negative slope because b is negative. So we need a line that has a negative slope. So it can't be a, because that's not a negative slope. B has a negative slope. C can't be C because C has a positive slope. D has a negative slope, so it could be that. E has a positive slope, so it can't be that. So we're now deciding between B and D. Now, we also know that C is positive, so C is the y-intercept. So that means that we have to have a positive y-intercept, which matches both of these. So then now is when we can think, okay, now instead of the equal sign, we have to look at the inequality symbol. So we have to look at the inequality symbol as y has to be greater than the line, basically. So y is greater than the line means that we're shading on top of the line. So we need to shade on top of the line here for B is what matches that we're shading above, that y is greater than. So then, yeah, someone asked, how do I know if it's negative? Because they told us in the problem that B is negative. So the number being multiplied by x is the slope. So it has a negative slope. So then let's go to, let me just grab a sip of water really quick. Number 39. So for number 39, it says, the Smith family plans a trip to a theme park, which is 2,400 miles away from their home. They were on the road for 60 hours. Their car gets 40 miles per gallon, and the average cost of gas was $3 per gallon. The car's gas tank can hold up to 20 gallons. What was their average speed? So speed is going to be the distance divided by the time. So distance over time. So we want the distance is 2,400 miles over the time, which is 60 hours. So then this is going to be just 2,400 divided by 60, and we would have miles per hour. So when we do that, we get that that's 40, so it would be B, 40 miles per hour. So then for number 40, it says approximately how much money did the Smiths spend on gas per mile traveled? Okay, so they're traveling 2,400 miles. That's what the question said. And then the question also said they get 40 miles per gallon. So it would be 40 miles for every 1 gallon. So this would tell us how many gallons they need. So if we do that, we get that they need 60 gallons. And then we know that it's $3 per gallon. So we would multiply that by $3 per gallon to know that they are spending then $180. Oh, sorry, not 1,000, 180. $180 is what I meant to say, because that's times the $3. So they're spending $180 and they're traveling 2,400 miles. So if we want to find out how much how much they spend on gas per mile, it would be 180 per the 2,400 miles would be dollars over miles, the amount they spend per miles. So then we just have to divide that, and when we do, we get 0.075, and it said approximately, so whatever's closest to that, which would be G. So now let's go to number 41. If the Smiths had half a tank of gas when they started their drive, what is the fewest number of times they would have to stop for gas? Okay, so they had half a tank of gas. In their tank, they can hold up to 20 gallons. So they already have 10 gallons if they have half a tank. So they have or had 10 gallons already. And then we wouldn't know how many times they're going to stop. Well, they have to travel 2,400 miles, right? And then there's going to be, it says that they get 40 miles per gallon. So it's going to be 40 miles per every 1 gallon. That would cross out the miles. And then we would say that they have 20 gallons in 1 tank. So 20 gallons in 1 tank. So that would cross out the gallons. And remember, the tank is going to tell us how many times they have to stop, because once your tank is empty, you have to fill up again, you know? So then if we do 2,400 divided by 40 and then divided by 20, we're going to get that it's equal to 3 tanks. But remember, they already have half of a tank. So this is equal to half of a tank. They already have half of a tank. So we have to subtract the half of the tank that they already have. And that would be that they need 2.5 tanks are needed after that initial half tank that they already are traveling with. So you can't, you would have to say, okay, they can fill it up like the 2 total times to fill up the 2 tanks, but then they can maybe get half a tank if they want to of gas, but that's still a 3rd stop. So it would still be 3 stops because they have to do like 2 full things of the tank, and then they have to get that half. So then it would be 3C. What's the book called? The book is called Overcoming ACT Math by Sophia Garcia. It's available on Amazon. So then let's go to number 42. So if y is a real number and this, then y is, so then sorry, that's my dog. So let's see. So y being 0, and it can't equal what y is, that doesn't work, because if we plug in 0 there, we get 0. And it says we can't get that. A number less than 1, well, 0 counts as a number less than 1, so we also can cross that out. And then the book is my name. H, irrational. So irrational, that would be like 3.14, like pi and like a bunch of weird numbers. But right away I can just see like negative would definitely not work, because it's an even number root. So and it's an even number root, so then that wouldn't work, yeah. Because then you can't have a negative, because you can't have that this is going to equal a negative number. Like, you can't say that -1 to the 4th, for instance, is equal to -1. If we plug in -1 for our number, that's not going to work, because -1 to the 4th is going to be +1. So then you have to take the 4th root of +1 and say that that's going to be equal to -1. Well, that doesn't work. You can't say that 1 is equal to -1. No, that does not work, just like we're supposed to have, where it doesn't work. So then it would have to mean that y is -j. So then let's go to number 43. So it says that we have all of this, and we want to know which of the following systems of equations could be used to solve for B and C. So right here we have like bases, and we are multiplying, so we're using product rule, which says that we keep the like base and we add the powers. Now, what you'll notice is that 16 and 2 are not like bases, so we have to think, how can we rewrite this with like bases? Well, we could say 2 to the b plus c is equal to 2 to the 4th is the same thing as 16, because 2 to the 4th equals 16. So then we could say for these to be equal, that means b plus c has to equal 4. So we would cross out anything that doesn't say that, basically. So we're going to cross out those. And then we're going to look at the next part. So this says that we have 1 over 5b, which means that 5 to the negative b is the same thing as that, because negative exponent rule, has to equal 125c. Well, how could we rewrite this with like bases? Well, we could say that 5 to the negative b is equal to, 125 is the same thing as 5 to the 3rd, so 5 to the 3c. So then we could say, okay, negative b has to equal 3c. So negative b equals 3c. So if we divide each side by b, we would get negative 1 is equal to 3c over b, which is d. So d is the one that says b plus c has to equal 4, and that this is equal to that. So then let's go to number 44. So it says, we have this part up here. Use a scatter plot for the next two questions, basically. Okay, a very large company has workers all across the United States. The scatter plot below displays the number of workers in tens who buy lunch in the work cafeteria every day by the salary of the workers in thousands of dollars. The line of best fit is included as well. This is the line of best fit, the gray part. So then we're going to go to number 44, which says how many workers with an income of $32,500 would be expected to buy lunch in the work cafeteria. So salary of workers, thank you so much, Kim, for the pizza. So then we have $32,500 for the salary of the workers. So we're going to go to $32,500 is going to be halfway between the $30,000 and the $35,000, because remember, this is in thousands of dollars. So we're looking right here. And then we want to know how many are expected to buy for that amount. So we're looking at the line of best fit right here. So we would say that that's 55, but remember it says in tens, 55 tens. Well, 55 tens is the same thing as 55 times 10, so that's 550. So that would be the answer, B. So for number 45, it says the number of workers who have a salary, sorry, that's my dog. The number of workers who have a salary of $30,000 who buy lunch in the work cafeteria is about how much less than the number predicted by the line of best fit. So again, we're going to look at salary for 30,000, because it's in thousands of dollars. And they're basically asking what's the difference between the predicted one by the line of best fit, so right here, and the actual dot, which is right here. So let's say this is about, 27-ish, we'll say, or 28. Because they both look the same distance away from the line. So we'll say like this is 28 and this is 52. So we'll say 28 and 52. So 52 minus 28, and remember this is in tens. So then, is that 52 minus 28? Hold on. 52, yeah, they're both like 3 away, I would say. Ish. Okay, so then we're going to say 52 minus 28, and that's going to be 24 tens. So then we could say that that's 24 tens is just 24 times 10, so about 240. What's closest to that? So that would be 250K. So then let's go to the next one. Is this legal? Yes, because it's my book that I wrote. So definitely. Yes, my dog is okay. She just has kennel cough right now. That's why she's coughing a little bit. But she's totally fine. She has all her medicine and everything. Thank you for the rose. So we have for number 46, it says, Emma's trying to gather data on public sentiment towards a new swimming pool in her neighborhood. Which of the following approaches would give Emma the most unbiased measure of public opinion? A, post a poll on the neighborhood's official social media page asking for votes in favor or against a new swimming pool. That's not really the best idea because you don't know like who's going to go on the social media page or if people even know about it. There could be something biased in like maybe the age range or something of the participants that are going to be answering stuff because like maybe older people don't use social media, like that kind of thing. And then we have B, have the neighborhood add the issue to the voting list in the upcoming weekly neighborhood meeting. That one's a little bit better because like if you have a neighborhood meeting, that means like the neighbors are going to be there, the people that you're trying to like survey for the pool. So that one's pretty good. So then we have C, stand outside City Hall and ask everyone who walks by if they are in favor or against the new swimming pool. So that's not really good because you're not surveying the people who you're intending to survey. Like, you're trying to find out what is the, like, the public, how is the public feeling towards the pool in your neighborhood. The people outside of City Hall probably have no idea about, like, a pool in your neighborhood, so that doesn't really, like, do anything. And, like, why are they there also could create bias. Like, people at City Hall, like, I don't know, maybe it's like government workers or something like that are more likely to be at City Hall, so then, like, they might have some sort of, like, political opinion what they're basing around, like, whether they're in favor of the pool or not. So that's just kind of like a bunch of problems. So then we have D, place a survey on the windshield of each neighbor's car. So you don't know if, like, every single neighbor has a car. That would be, like, my first inclination of, like, thinking how this could create bias. And then also, like, it could fly away too, like, on the windshield of the car. Like, that doesn't really seem like they're probably going to just drive off with the flyer. And then for E, have students at her school ask their siblings about their opinion. So, I mean, if you ask a bunch of kids about if they want a swimming pool or not, you're probably going to get a pretty biased, like, opinions about whether they want the pool or not. So definitely not that one. So yeah, B would definitely be the correct answer. So then we have 47. On a recent chemistry exam, the boys in the class averaged 86 and the girls averaged 92. If there are thrice as many girls, which means 3 times as many girls in the class as boys, what was the overall average for the class? Okay, so on a recent chemistry exam, the boys in the class averaged 86. So the boys have an 86 average, and then the girls have a 92 average. And there are 3 times as many girls in the class as boys. So that means the girls is equal to 3 times the amount of boys. So 86 is for the boys. So that means that if B is the number of boys, that would just be B over the sum of all the boys added up. And then we would say that 92 is equal to, and then G is the number of girls, so we could say that that's G, and then on top, the sum of all the girls. Someone asked if trig and pre-calc are on the ACT. Yes, there is some of that. So then let's see, we're trying to find out what's the overall average for the class. So the overall average of the class would be the class average is going to be equal to the sum of B plus the sum of G, like the sum of all the girls plus the sum of all the boys, divided by the number of boys plus the number of girls. Now remember, we have a relationship between G and B, so we can just replace the G with the 3B if we want to help us out here. So we can say instead of G, that's 3B. Whoops. So then we could say, okay, if I want to find out the sum of B, that would just be 86B is equal to the sum of B. And then we could say that 3B times 92, what's 92 times 3? I don't trust myself to do it in my head right now. So that would be 276B is equal to the sum of G. So then we could say that we could plug each of these into this equation right here. And we could say the class average is equal to the sum of B, which is 86B, plus the sum of G, which is 276B, over, and then remember, G is the same thing as 3B, we said, so we could just plug in 3B there, and we could say B plus 3B. And then we could say, okay, I'm going to add on top, so if I have 276 plus 86, that's going to be 362, so 362B over 4B. Where'd my calculator go? I moved it somewhere and I don't know where it went. So that would be, well, that's going to be 30, it goes into 36 9 times. And then, so it would be 90, wait, is that 91 point, hold on, I have to do it off to the side. I know I'm going to get comments about this. I'm a math tutor. How can you not do this in your head? Well, I just can't. The numbers all flip and stuff in my head. So then it would be 9 goes into that. So then 4 goes into that 0 times. So then it would be 90 and a half. So then it would be H right there. So then let's go to number 48 right here. I actually love you for this. I'm glad that you guys are enjoying it. So then let's go and do number 48 through 50 using this information. A private school begins in August and only accepts students third to 7th grade. I should change that to in. I didn't catch that before. In 3rd to 7th grade. If parents enroll their children in the school on or before June 18th, then the parents receive a discount of 25% off the regular tuition rate for each child enrolled. The grade of any child is the child's grade in August. So let's do number 48. If Mrs. Smith enrolled her 2 children by July 18th, so she's getting that discount, in 4th and 6th grade, then what was the total amount Mrs. Smith paid to enroll her 2 children in this private school? So 4th grade, the price is going to be $450, but remember, she gets 25% off. If it's 25% off, she's paying 75% of $450. So it would be 75%, 0.75 times $450, plus she has another child in 6th grade, so she's also getting the 25% discount, so she's paying 75% of $550. Oops, 75% of 550. So then we would just have to multiply that and add it up. And let me see, where did I put my calculator? Oh, there it is. I don't feel like doing it out. So let's see, 450 times 0.75 plus 0.75 times 550. And that's going to be 750. So that would be C. Okay, so now let's go to number 49. Which of the following equations could represent the relationship between the regular tuition rate T and the grade X of any child enrolled at this particular private school? So for this one, you could probably just like plug it in and check, or you could just see like how the, if you didn't know all of your y equals mx plus b stuff, you could just plug it in and check, or you can use the y equals mx plus b like a linear equation thing, because you see that these are all linear. And you could say, okay, well, what's the slope? Because that's the number being multiplied by x. So then we would say, okay, what's the slope for the regular tuition rate? How is it changing? What's the change in the y, or the t in this case, over the change in the grade level? Well, the change would be that it goes up 50 each time, and it goes up by 1 grade level, so it's 50 over 1 each time. So the slope should be 50, so that means we should have 50 times x. So we can automatically cross out f and g from that. And then we could say, okay, well, what's the y-intercept? Well, that's going to be a little trickier. Then we have to probably just plug in for that one. But at least you eliminated like about half of your choices, a little less than half. So let's just plug in 3 and 400 for our x and our, your x and your t. So 3 comma 400. So 400, does that equal 50 times 3? No. So then 50 times 3 is going to be 150, so that means we have 250 plus 50 times 3 is 150. That does equal 400, but let's just make sure that this doesn't work for k. So it's probably j, but we're going to verify that k doesn't work. So then 300 plus 150 for 50 times 3. So that's going to be 450. So yeah, the one that works is j. I'm glad you guys are enjoying the live. No problem, for everyone saying thank you. And then let's go to number 50. Miss Davis enrolled her 2 children by June 18th. Her two children are in 3rd grade and 4th grade. The school put the names of all the children enrolled by June 18th into a raffle for each grade level. The winner of this raffle gets free school lunch for a year. Given that one name will be randomly selected for each grade level, what is the probability that the names of both of Miss Davis's children will be selected? So we want both of the children, and she says that they're enrolling by June 18th. Remember, they told us how many in each grade are enrolled by June 18th. One of her kids is in 3rd grade and one is in 4th. So let's start with the probability that the 3rd grader gets it. So the probability of that one 3rd grader out of the 25 that are going to be in the raffle would be 1 out of 25. And then remember, it's saying what's the probability of both. So then let's talk about the probability of the other one, the other student that's a 4th grader. Well, that one student out of the 15 students would be the probability that that student gets it. Now, these are the individual probabilities, the probability of each of those events, but we want to know what's the probability that both of them happen. Whenever they're using words like both and both or and, that's indicating that you're multiplying the probability of each of the events. So then that's going to be multiplied. So then that's going to be 1 over, and then that's going to be 1 over 375. Yes, so that would be C. What grade do you tutor in? I tutor in a bunch of different grade levels, so I can't really answer that question because there's like a ton. So then, which of the following is the smallest integer greater than root 72? Okay, so think about your perfect squares. So think about perfect squares that you know around root 72. So we would say root 64 is 8, and then we could say root 81 is 9, and this is going to be the guy that's in the middle there, so it has to be between 8 and 9 is what this value is. So which of the following is the smallest integer that's greater than that? So it has to be greater than that, and it has to be an integer, so that's going to be 9. So H. Do you have any advice for someone going into trig and pre-calc, but I'm really bad at math? Trig is not, like, pre-calc and trig is a lot of, I mean, you could get through it if you're bad at math with a lot of memorization, but it's really not that difficult because a lot of it is just, like, the same thing over and over again for, like, the unit circle and, like, the sine, cosine stuff. So, like, if you get really good at just figuring out, like, how to analyze the unit circle, that kind of covers, like, half of what the problems are usually for most students. So I would, like, focus on the day that, like, whatever the day is that your teacher introduces unit circle, pay extra attention that day. Do you teach biostatistics? No, I do not. I thought you said it'd be a smaller number than 8 and 7. So it's a root 72 is between 8 and 9. So it has to be in between these, is what root 72 is, but then we're asking for the smallest integer greater than that. So this would have to be, like, let's say it's 8.5. It's probably not exactly that, but, like, for instance, it could be, like, 8.5. What's the smallest integer greater than that? Well, that would be 9. So then let's go to number 52. In August, Smith's Books kept track of the number of books sold for each sales transaction. The results are summarized in the table below. For all of August, how many sales transactions occurred where only 4 books were sold? Assume there were 700 total sales transactions for August. So only 4 books sold. Percent of transactions would be, that's 3. 4 would be 10%. So 10% of the total transactions, so it would be 0.10 times 700. So 0.10 times 700, that would just be 70, so A.